Joining us right now, former American ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton. Ambassador Bolton, it's always great to have you this morning.
Good morning. Glad to be with you.
So there's a lot of noise here about the president actually considering having a meeting with President Hassan Rouhani, the new president of Iran. Let me ask you the question this way. What has Iran done to deserve the honor of meeting with the president of the United States?
Well, they haven't done anything. And in fact, this is something that would be very beneficial for the Ayatollahs in Tehran. It would do nothing for the United States. I have a very fundamental objection to this. I mean, there are times when subordinates meet with governments like Iran. That's just part of international diplomacy. But the fact is, even under the Obama administration, Iran is still listed by the State Department as a state sponsor of terrorism. So while Hassan Rouhani isn't himself exploding terrorist bombs, he is supplying the explosives. He's funding the terrorist. He is running a terrorist-supporting state. And in my view, that makes him the functional equivalent of a terrorist, because the terrorists couldn't function unless they had this kind of support. So for Barack Obama to shake Hassan Rouhani's hands means the president of our country is shaking the hand of a terrorist. Yeah. And I just find that unacceptable.
And what is even more amazing to me, Ambassador Bolton, is the fact that this is being floated out there. I mean, this stuff doesn't get leaked by accident. They're purposely putting it out there that the president is considering doing this. If he doesn't, I mean, how does this benefit us? This seems like another diplomatic fumble to me.
Well, it shows that the president approaches the Iranian nuclear weapons program now from a real position of weakness, in large part because of what's happened over the past month in Syria, where the president has failed at one effort after another, and where our friends and adversaries around the world look at his performance and just shake their heads. So Iran has a new president, not the real leader of the country, while we're on the subject, the number two, in effect. This is a man who, when he was chief nuclear negotiator for Iran in 2003, 2005, followed the same playbook. He smiles, he says soothing things. Back then, Hassan Rouhani got the Europeans to make real substantive concessions, while Iran made fake concessions, tactical concessions, to buy time and legitimacy to continue their nuclear weapons program. So Rouhani is saying perfectly logically from his point of view, this worked before, I'm going to try it again.
All right, I want to move to the situation over in Kenya right now. Some guys with a group called Al-Shabaab took over a mall. These are Al-Qaeda affiliates. The troubling thing for Americans is apparently some of the people that are involved in that attack at a mall were Americans. They come from Minnesota. And apparently a number of people have been recruited to go from Minnesota, where there's apparently a large contingent of Somali Americans, to go over there and fight these fights. One wonders, what would happen if they chose to, say, go to that mall that happens to be in their backyard, the Mall of America.
The Mall of America, exactly. Well, this is, for me, it's one of these fundamental points. You listen to politicians and political commentators. They're constantly telling you Americans don't care about foreign policy. It's too remote from them. It doesn't affect their everyday lives. It doesn't matter. It's not a political winner. Here we have Al-Shabaab, which is a Somali-based affiliate of Al-Qaeda, attacking a Western shopping mall in Nairobi, Kenya, far from their base of operations. Now, I agree, Nairobi is not New York, but the fact that they have demonstrated even this limited capability to strike at a distance and to use Kenyan Muslims to help them carry this out, and with the aid of Americans and apparently people from Europe and around the world, this is the sort of attack. It's practice in Nairobi. I hate to be that blunt about it because 62 people or more are dead, and it's still not over in the fourth day. But I tell you, if they were to attack, let's just take the Mall of America in Minnesota or Fifth Avenue in New York, or you name it, a place where there are crowds.
There are soft targets everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. We are a very soft target country, and it really, after 9/11, it's amazing we haven't seen more of this. But this demonstrates the continued strength and growth of Al-Qaeda affiliates throughout North Africa and the Middle East. Well, I'm afraid more is coming.
But how much of that may be going on right here in this country of which we are not aware?
Well, I think it's a very, very serious question. The political correctness police make it hard to ask this question. And members of Congress who have tried have been burned on it, and that's why I'm afraid unless people raise this subject again to the level of national debate, I'm afraid we're going to get burned badly before we take it seriously. You know, the president doesn't like to talk about terrorism. He's still not willing to say that terrorism is waging a global war against us. He's still back in his rhetoric in the campaign that Al-Qaeda's on the run and Osama bin Laden is dead. And I just think it's divorced from reality.
Our guest is John Bolton, of course. He was the United States ambassador to the United Nations. And speaking of the United Nations, we mentioned the president is there this week. He will be giving a speech today at 10 o'clock. And it reminds me of a year ago when he addressed the United Nations. This was just weeks after the attack on our consulate in Benghazi, as well as the attacks in Egypt at our embassy. And so much of that speech was about this YouTube video and about how, you know, we have to respect Islam. And many people saw that as a real fumble of his responsibility to speak out against terrorism. Do you think he even mentions terrorism today? What do you think the president's agenda is?
Well, he'll say something about Kenya. That's my guess. But I don't really think he's going to say much new based on the briefings they've given us. You know, I think the failure 1 year later for the United States to have retaliated for the assassinations in Benghazi, really the failure to have done much of anything, is a much more serious blow to the United States' credibility than Obama's failure to do anything about Assad's use of chemical weapons. This was the murder of the president's personal representative in Libya. And so the lesson is you can kill Barack Obama's personal representative, and he attributes it to the wrong cause and then doesn't do anything about it.
And he vowed to the UN General Assembly there. You're right. He talked about the YouTube video, but then he said, "But we will track you down, and you will be held accountable for this." Here we are a year later. Nothing.
Not so much.
Yeah, they're sipping coffee in the cafes of Benghazi, and believe me.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think the president fundamentally doesn't understand that we are in a global war against terrorism. He thinks the whole world is sort of a big domestic community. Everything can be handled by law enforcement. The way to deal with these terrorists is to indict them and bring them to the United States and try them. They just laugh at that. The terrorists know that they're in a war, and I'm sure they're befuddled that Barack Obama hasn't figured it out.
All right. Well, Ambassador John Bolton, always a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thanks. Looking forward to the president's speech today.
Yes, and we want to remind you, it will be at 10 o'clock this morning. You can hear it live at WMAL.com.